in a week and a half.
See, I must have left it at here.
Still a
can ask
crappy
her.
menu, there's nothing on
Yeah.
it. Not since COVID, before COVID, you could get some good stuff on there. But they put up one of those sun sails
Oh, yeah.
and some umbrellas, some tables, and this barricade to keep Harley's golf carts off the patio. That's just made
I don't have no phone replacement going on. We're searching.
Okay, let's stop that now.
She's starting Monday.
Chuck Loggers
Starting
opened up
Monday.
across the street,
We're
right?
gonna be 3-week.
In
overlap.
Applebee's.
I'm good.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
their
yeah.
cheapest hamburger's $14. I saw a menu online. So,
It's in here, it's just not.
cheesesteak sub in Hennessy's now $11.
Okay.
It's almost competitive.
I just have it turned around backwards. There we go.
I pulled mine apart too,
That
and I couldn't
parking
get
lot
it.
was jammed.
The meeting of the Wednesday, March 8th Planning Board is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's under the wheel. Damn, it's bright in here.
Good evening. Is there anyone here that would like to speak at the open forum? Yes, please come forward and state your name and address.
Yes, my name is David Llewellyn. I live at 212 Bengal Circle in Oldsmar. And I was one of those that attended a community outreach presentation of this project over at the hotel. And just from myself and my neighbors, many of which I gathered didn't attend tonight, it was a very good presentation, was well received, and surprisingly, when developers come back for a second look, it wasn't like he was asking for anything. He was actually giving something. So I'm very positive feeling about this and hope that this project goes ahead soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come this evening. Anyone else? Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak to give testimony this evening that needs to be sworn in?
Do you swear the testimony you were about to give is the truth, so help you before God? Thank you.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the February minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from Wednesday, February 8th, 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Would like to enter the minutes into record as approved. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So, being approved, then we will enter the minutes of the Wednesday, February 8th Planning Board meeting into record. Items to be heard tonight. The first item on our agenda is the City of Oldsmar Land Development Code Text Amendments and Public Hearing applicant. It's CA 23-02. We have a speaker to make a presentation on that.
For the record, Ronnie Blackshear with the City of Oldsmar. I'm going to make a presentation with regards to the changes to the sign regulations. In your packets, you may have received like a complete package of other additional sign regulations. A revised copy should have been sent out to you, I believe it was. It's only going to go over one item, which is dealing with portable signs. So,
We can see it on our screens now. Thank you.
okay, this is the City of Oldsmar sign regulations, case number CA 23-02. As a background with regards to signs, signs provide an important medium to communicate a variety of commercial and non-commercial messages. Signs can assist a jurisdiction in creating and enhancing community identity. Appropriate regulations confirm signs do not pose a threat to public safety, become a detriment to property values, or detract from community aesthetics. It is important to ensure that government regulation of signs does not infringe upon the protection afforded by the U.S. Constitution. And when we look at signs, we generally look at two types of sign regulations, whether it's content-based that deals with the actual content of the sign versus content neutral, which regulates time, place, and manner. The City of Oldsmar understands the importance of signs and has taken steps to balance the interests of all stakeholders. With regards to the one that we're dealing with tonight, it's portable signs. It's to clarify that a sign bearing a non-commercial message and carried by a person in traditional public places is not considered a portable sign. It's further defined portable signs to not impede upon existing rights. The city was made aware of this a court case, LaCroix versus the town of Fort Myers Beach, where the court determined a similarly worded provision had the effects of preventing a person from carrying a sign in traditional public places. As far as any sign or any land development code amendment, it has to go through the criteria of three different criteria. The request for the text amendment was reviewed against the standards approved by standards of approval outlined by section 3.13.2 of the Land Development Code. The first criteria is the amendment complies with the comprehensive plan and advances the purpose of the Land Development Code. The comprehensive plan requires orderly and concise development of design practices. The LDC's purpose is to promote the public health, safety, general welfare through reasonable, consistent, and non-discriminatory sign standards. The amendment will contribute to promote the community's welfare. The proposed amendment includes simple, straightforward language to ensure a common understanding by all affected parties. The proposed amendment increases compliance with the sign regulations, aid code enforcement efforts by lessening code violations and simplifying code investigations. The third criteria, the amendment will not grant a special privilege to an individual property owner. Exemptions and special treatment of certain types of signs could give rise to heightened scrutiny by the courts. That was the content-based versus content-neutral scrutiny, whether it's strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny. Regulations must have a neutral effect, time, place, and manner, that's content neutral, on speech, and should not define the content of the sign, that's content-based. The amendment introduces language which balances aesthetic, economic, and safety interests while allowing freedom of speech. The recommendation is based on the information provided. Staff finds the proposed sign text change request the amendment to the portable sign definition consistent with the Oldsmar Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code, and recommends approval of CA 23-02. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions of the applicant?
So the changes in blue in this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then are we looking,
Anything that's underlined, it's changed. Anything that's stricken is the one that's coming out. But I
and is
think
this
it's all changed.
going to be reviewed at a future date, or is this something that we're going to discuss after this?
Yes, sir. What occurred was that when we were putting the information together for the other amendments to the sign code, we realized that it required more of a review by our city attorney. And looking at that information and based on the amount of changes that were made, we felt that it was better to kind of pull it for now to kind of make sure that we go over that information with the city attorney and city manager, and to make sure that we're in compliance with what needs to be going as we move forward with the new language.
Okay, so we're really just adding language that allows people to carry signs on their body or in their hands.
We're making sure that what is being carried, that's a non-commercial message, is not considered a portable sign.
Okay. So in other words, if someone's on a street corner spinning one of those signs saying, "Come shop at, my,"
That's a commercial sign.
That would be
This
commer-
deals with portable signs, meaning that, say, if someone has a sign up to say, save the whales, or anything that has a non-commercial message, we want to make sure that those type of things, a person carrying a non-commercial message is not considered a portable sign.
so if they're saying, "I'm hungry," and
That's a non-commercial
that'd be
message.
fine. Okay, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Have you defined what is what this is covering? I mean, you're saying that a sign is not bearing a commercial message. Is that like, that's not a portable sign, so what kind of a sign is that?
Well, a portable sign is, and I'm not looking at the definition itself, but it is explained in the actual code itself, the LDC. As far as commercial and non-commercial, that is anything that has to do with the selling of goods or services, things of that nature, we're talking commercial. Non-commercial messages, save the whales, you're holding up a sign that's basically a personal message of, we are not in favor of a certain amendment or anything of that nature. That's anything that's non-commercial that doesn't deal with the sale of goods and services.
Right, I get that. What I'm asking is, what is the term used for that? You have
I guess
commercial signs, that portable sign is now a sign that's showing a commercial, right? For like the one where he mentioned, the
No,
guy just flipped that.
the only change to the definition is to say that anyone who's carrying a message, a person who's carrying a message, that's a non-commercial message, is not to be considered a portable sign. And that's the language that we have. Anything, if they're carrying a message that's advertising, spinning like the Mr. Cabinas had indicated, that's describing a commercial message, then it's considered a portable sign in that regard. But anything that's considered non-commercial message carried by a person, individual person, it's not considered a portable sign. And that's the definition that's being offered today, and that was based on the case with LaCroix versus the city of Fort Myers Beach.
So it's not a sign at all.
It's not a portable sign,
What kind of a
What
sign
kind of
is it?
sign is it?
a non-commercial.
A non-commercial sign?
Yes,
That's how it'd be defined,
yes.
because that's not in here anywhere.
No, what's being defined here is that taking out the person who's carrying a because if you look at the language, based on what was actually being presented in our definition, anything, it kind of gives you the feeling that the person who's carrying any kind of sign would be considered a portable sign. And that was what the LaCroix versus the city of Fort Myers Beach case was about. What we're saying here is we're defining it to make sure that a person carrying a non-commercial sign, save the whales or whatever you want to say, that's non-commercial, that's not considered a portable sign. Anything else, commercial, if a person is carrying a commercial message, spinning a sign or holding up, say, come to Subway or whatever you want to say on the sign, it's considered a commercial message, that would be a portable sign. We're just taking out the part where a person carrying traditional non-commercial message in public places, on the street, protesting or where have you with that non-commercial message is not considered a portable sign. We're
So
just taking that part out.
what I'm asking is if it's not a portable sign anymore, like he said, what kind of a sign is it? Is it like
It-
a
It's a
piercing sign?
no, it's a non-commercial sign.
An editorial sign?
It's a non-commercial
Definition, or
sign.
what's the words?
You have two types of sign, commercial and non-commercial.
A personal
It's a
sign?
non-commercial sign that doesn't deal with anything, the selling of goods or services. The way the definition is written, portable sign includes commercial signs, but we're saying that a person who's carrying a non-commercial sign is not considered carrying a portable sign. We're just separating that part of that portion out. Person carrying a non-commercial message is not considered a portable sign.
Yeah, I don't think we understand each other, but that's fine. It's not important.
Well, I think it's important to explore. Does anyone else have questions?
No question. Is content of the sign regulated somewhere else?
Well, the thing is, though, you have two versions of signs. You have content-based versus content neutral. Content-based meaning that if we have a sign that says that all political signs, a regulation that says all political signs must be removed in X amount of days, or you have X amount of days to present that. That in itself is describing the actual content of what the sign is, which is a political sign, versus saying that since a political sign is considered a temporary sign, if the message would say all temporary signs will be moved after the occurrence or the event is over, you're not considering the actual content of the sign, but you're actually looking at the time, place, and manner, which is content neutral, meaning that it's not subject to the highest scrutiny versus where a content sign is, meaning it's strict scrutiny. And those type of signs or those type of messages are given the highest level of review by a court and could be considered, could be stricken. Anything that's dealing with time, place, and manner, where you're dealing with not the actual content of the sign, but the mechanics of it, the place, the time, and you're not being overly broad in saying that you're pointing out a certain type of temporary sign that would be under those type of rules, then you would not be subject to the highest rule of highest level of review. You're still subject to review. We call it intermediate scrutiny. And so those are the type of two things that that a court would look at, especially the highest court, the Supreme Court. If you're at that high level, you're more than likely could get your regulation or even your whole code, whether it's a sign code or even an LDC code, to be stricken as unconstitutional. If you're dealing with time, place, and manner, and you're across the board even keel with any type of temporary sign, and everyone is on the same page, because if you look at, for instance, if I have a real estate sign, and if I would put on there to say that that real estate sign has to be removed after 30 days or any other sign, and I would say that, say, a for sale sign or someone is offering a sale in a store, that needs to be removed in 14 days. Well, we kind of know that real estate could sell in a day. It may take a month or it may take a year. So you're actually, at that point, if you're specifically talking about the sign, the real estate, that's a problem. That would be at that highest level of scrutiny, strict scrutiny. If you're saying that a temporary sign should be removed at the end of its occurrence or the purpose to which it represents, you're not dealing with a type of sign, you're dealing with the mechanics of it, the time, place, and manner. That will still be under scrutiny, but it would be intermediate scrutiny, but it would be more than likely court will find that valid versus, say, the other one. You can't talk about the actual content of a sign, because then you're basically putting one level of a type of sign over another. And that's what happens in a lot of cases in sign regulations, is that you need to be on an even level and not deal with the content, but just, if you're going to regulate, you need to regulate by the time, place, or manner. Whether it's the size, whether it's the amount of time, the duration that it's going to be presented, or where it's going to be placed at.
So would it be a correct understanding that this change is to stay within constitutional boundaries of free speech with
Yeah.
signage?
Another thing too is that you can impede on a person's First Amendment rights, and that's that's probably the crux of this one, is that someone who's holding a non-commercial sign, you're telling me that if you're telling me if it's a portable sign, then you can actually, regulate based on what the portable sign definition is. But my sign doesn't talk about anything that's commercial. It talks about something that's impeded, that I have the right to protest, or I have the right to hold up the sign to say that something is not fair. It's something that's not commercial, something that's not set at that high level of scrutiny, and a court will find that as being intermediate scrutiny. It's still reviewed, but they will find that being a valid way of carrying a sign, because it's not dealing with that high level. And we're not actually looking at the person now, we're actually looking at the actual sign.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I appreciate the depth that you went into that, because it was very educational. And
I would say this is that when you deal with sign regulations, it's a lot more complex, and there's a lot more things that are that are involved. And I believe as the city goes through and begin to look at the other parts of the sign code, there will be a lot more explanation as to how they're going to deal with it, and provide a better understanding. This is what we would call something that was a simple change, but there will be some others that will probably be a little bit more, will provide a little bit more explanation that we need to address the board with.
sure, and I appreciate the questions, because the question about whether it was going to go through other iterations was one that I was wondering. There are definitely some, like others brought up, some there's lack of clarity in some of the terms, temporary, limited. There are some things in there that really could use a little bit more definitive explanation, so that you're not doing exactly what you were just going into. My question is about the personal sign versus the portable sign. The personal sign, you explained quite well, as a sign with a message. You mentioned Save the Whales, for example, Girl Scouts, but I can see there could be gray areas. The Girl Scouts are selling cookies. The whales are raising money to save the whales. So there definitely, to your point, needs to be a little bit more clarity on exactly.
But what we're doing in this case only, is that we're separating the person out of this. You can still have portable signs, whether it's non-commercial, that's in front of a business to say, Save the Whales. They can have that. That's fine. That would be considered a portable sign, but we're saying that someone who's carrying a sign could be walking down the street in a public place, that person carrying a non-commercial sign is not considered a portable sign. That's the only thing that's being separated out.
Right. And
Because if we keep that in, then it will definitely create problems.
Sure, and I'm hearing, I think we all understand the intent behind it, and it's just like with a lot of intent, you clear up one thing, but then it can open up a lot of other details behind that.
And that's the
good
reason why
intent.
we pulled the other ones, is because the one thing that I've told the city manager and other staff is that when you start to look at certain parts of a regulation, just looking at a certain part, there's a likelihood of those unintended consequences, and that's kind of what we were seeing that was happening with that. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that we
Did you have
cover
another
things.
question?
I have another question. So I'm carrying a sandwich sign down my sidewalk that says, I really personally love Domino's Pizza. That's a personal sign.
Well, it's a personal sign because you're not advertising for Domino's.
But there's an implied advertisement there, isn't there?
Yeah, but that's a great point that you made, because one of the other things that actually occurs with sign regulations is that, and this is how businesses try to get past it, to say that, well, we have a non-commercial sign. You have part of a sign that speaks of commercial, and then part that speaks of non-commercial. And that's where you have to start to decipher to see exactly how does it fit. And for that,
Guess you'd have to check that person's pay stub to make sure they
Well, I was
weren't.
just gonna say, if you're being paid
We're
by
common.
Domino's, it's commercial, but if you're not, then it's personal.
I don't know if code enforcement's gonna go to that level.
I don't either.
It's interesting, because that's where I was going, because when Mr. Mason was speaking, I wrote down loophole, personal. because there is, of course, businesses are always one step ahead, and they're going to look at any law and find a way that they can pay somebody to stand and walk down the street or whatever. But the intent is there, and it's very good. But there is definitely some language, I think, that should be looked at throughout all of the changes, not just with that specific area.
And I've done sign language, sign codes, sign regulations, revised it in other jurisdictions. And one of the things that is an issue is that when you have things that are describing a certain thing, it can lead to not describing something else. And it's just like almost a dominoes effect. And we want to try to make sure that we have a sign ordinance that's concise, consistent, and easily identifiable, and also understandable not only by businesses, but also by the general public and even boards.
My point was, ultimate point was that if it's not going to be defined in this, if you're going to take it out of this definition of a portable sign, it's got to be addressed somewhere else in the code. So it has to have a term assigned to it, so it has a term that you can look for later in the code or some other part of the code that addresses those signs.
What's it?
Defined,
Sorry, I was going.
it's a non-commercial message, so it's already defined in the code under the section which defines non-commercial message. It says any message which is not a commercial message, such message involves ideological, political, religious, artistic, or scientific speech. So it's in the definitions.
What page is that in our packet?
Definitions of the land development code.
It's not in our packet. It's on
That's
the
the other part.
website whole, okay.
But I think Mr. Mason's point is that he's looking at if we're taking it out of this portable sign, is it described anywhere else? It's sign carried by a person. That's just generally what it is. And if it's a sign that's a non-commercial sign, which Ms. Childers had defined, that's the actual sign itself. The person that's carrying it is not considered a portable sign, and that's where the discrepancy in this particular definition of portable sign, that other jurisdictions that we saw in our city attorney saw that was an issue, and we needed to make that correction to make sure that that someone who's carrying a non-commercial message, as what is being defined, is not in there.
Does anyone else have a question on the portable versus personal hand-carried sign? Because I actually had a question about something else, but I don't want to go on until.
Is language covered? So what I'm saying is if you have a personal sign that's no longer covered in this,
One thing that you don't want to do is to describe or define any particular sign, because once you start doing that, like if you generally, most jurisdictions actually put in definitions of, say, what a real estate sign is, or what a political sign is. When you begin to do that kind of thing, you also need to have code to show what that regulation actually means. But when you start doing that, then you come to the problem is that you're actually focusing on that particular type of sign, creating language for that, and it's pretty much just for that sign. That may be whether it's a positive or negative thing towards the other signs. You may be elevating that type of sign over another sign, and that's what you want to get away from.
right, that's not what I was talking about.
Yeah, when you start looking at real estate signs, political signs, for sale signs, now hiring signs, all of those in the category of temporary signs. And you want to define those type of signs by the term temporary. You don't necessarily have to say these are what it is, because you can go on with an infinite number of those type of signs, because when you start to identify those type of signs as being that, you also need to make sure that you're covering your regulations, because that's kind of what the courts would look at. You want to make sure that they're all on an even keel. Like I said, a real estate sign, someone's for sale sign, it may sell in a day, or it may take a month or a year, depending on what it is. Or so you have to look at when you're going to look at, as far as, say, the duration of it, then you would look at the type of, whenever that occurrence or the event will end, so it doesn't balance one over the other. It's going to end whenever that occurrence or event ends. If you have a garage sale for the weekend, once that garage sale over, then you would have a a particular period of time where that sign needs to be removed because that event is over. If you have a real estate sign that you're selling that, say, didn't sell for a month, but you don't know when it's going to sell, once that real estate piece of property does sell, then at a certain point where your code actually talks about the duration, you have X number of days, which is the same with anything, to remove that sign because that event is over at that point.
That answer your
No,
question?
not even close. The language I'm talking about is expletives. If somebody holds a sign that says, save the whales, is that covered?
Yes, that's a non-commercial sign.
But I may not want my kids looking at a sign that says, save the whales. Do you get me? You understand what I'm saying?
That's protected on the free speech. That's a First
Yep.
Amendment right there.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
You gotta counsel your child about that
Posi-
horrible language.
Yeah,
It's a
positive or negative,
parent-child
it's
thing.
covered somewhere, so it's good. That's what I was asking.
Now, there are some language that are on signs that, violates our Constitution, and those things could be, pointed out. So, and a code should actually say that. And I've read some of our code, but I have to go into depth to see exactly what it is. But there are certain things that are not, just like you can't say, fire, say within a crowded theater, things of that nature. But, certain things that we would consider obscenities could be covered under the First Amendment or could not. So there are things that the actual Constitution talks about.
Sorry.
No, it's a valid point. It really is a valid point. The free speech is important, so, how do you define what is offensive to one person and
Well, I think we're really talking about two different things. You're talking about freedom of speech and signs, and it's two different things.
Yeah, they'll
It's two
can-
different things,
They'll
but you can,
cancel you later, or the
Yeah,
free
yeah,
speech part.
yeah.
well, I would say this, you're talking about two different things, but you got to remember, signs affect your First Amendment right. It affects taking, which is another clause under the Constitution. There's a lot of things that when you do things with the Fifth Amendment, things of that nature, it still is affected by signs. So that's why you have to be careful about what you actually put on signs
Sure.
to make sure that you're not affecting that. So.
And I know that was what was the spur that created the rest of the changes that are proposed in this packet that we received. But if everyone's asked the questions they have about the portable versus personal handheld, I'm just curious how this, the pages aren't numbered, but I'm looking at page, I guess, 3, it would be, 13.4.2, all districts, where there's quite a bit of blue that goes into detail about signs.
Is that the document you got in your packet, or is that the one that was on the desk?
No, it's the
when you
one
came
I
in?
got in my packet.
We're
'cause I
not
just-
discussing
Yeah,
that.
it's changed.
Now,
We're only discussing.
When you look at
item
that.
2.
All right,
Only- the
so-
only we're discussing, the other items were pulled because of
I got the other one too.
needed more review.
I thought Kathy.
internal review.
Okay, so none of that is
No.
up, okay, good. So, just wanted to make sure. So, I have no questions then. If everyone has had their discussion, then is there anyone here that wanted to speak on that issue of the signs? Okay. If no one's here to speak on this particular item, then we'll close, and I'm looking for a motion.
I recommend to City Council the approval of CA 23-02, the City of Oldsmar Land Development Code Text Amendment and public hearing. Well,
Second.
All right, having a motion and a second, then we don't need a roll call vote, we do? A roll call vote then, please?
Unless there's any more discussion.
Oh, thank you.
Aye.
Okay, let me do the roll call.
No more discussion.
Okay. Board Member Campanis.
Aye.
Board Member
Aye.
Harvey.
What?
Board Member Rimdor.
Aye.
Board Member Mason.
no?
Board Member Stock.
Aye.
Board Member Pelletier. Chair Oliver.
Aye.
Code Amendment 2302 regarding the amendment to the portable sign definition is approved with 6 votes for and 1 against. Board Member Mason dissenting.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to item 2, or 3 on our list, EA 23-01, Devin S. Rushnell, LLC Development Agreement and Public Hearing. So we would like to hear from the applicant on that, please.
So on this item, Tatiana Childress, City of Oldsmar Planning and Redevelopment Director. On this item, we have a presentation from the applicant, and we also have staff presentation. And we would like to proceed with the applicant's presentation of the overall site changes.
Okay, good evening. My name is John Buse. I represent the developer, Devin S. Rushnell. My address, 150 State Street East, Oldsmar. Before I start, this presentation will kind of explain the changes to the site plan that's before you. There's two kind of catalysts that started this change from the original approved site plan, one of which is the approval to fill in the ditch along the back side of the property. And the other one was the interior units, which originally had a big giant garage in the first floor because it's in a floodplain. So they say they had a 4-car garage. Now we're pushing the garage in to be a 2-car garage, so then we can park cars underneath the unit, so behind the garage, to hide them from view. So the overall dimensions of the units that I'll show you tonight are the same. They didn't change. The width and depth is exactly the same. And nothing on State Street from the live work units changed. So these changes that we'll show you are only for the interior units. This will be hard unless you're doing this on your own, but this is the technical site plan. Before and after, they are in the exact same position on the site. So if you toggle back and forth, you can see exactly where they moved. But since I'm not going to do that tonight because I don't have the capability of doing that, this is the after site plan where the benefits of the changes we just spoke of are now we can use the back of the property for the lane or the road, which allowed us to push the units away from the park green and increase the park green almost 3 times the size it was before. So again, we have the same number of units and the same general location as they were before, but tucking those cars under allowed us to push the units towards the street, right? Because before we'd have a unit, cars out on a driveway, and then the street. So now we're parking the cars under the unit, so it allowed us to slide everything closer to the street, which gave us a much larger public space. We also moved the pool and cabana. If you look at the very south side of the page, the pool and cabana used to be, and I don't think I can point this out on the screen, but it used to be around the little tiny curve at the bottom of the paper. And we moved that closer to the park green, which would take it away from the neighbors, farther away, as well as all the units that abutted the neighbor's property also moved farther away. In other words, they used to be 20 feet and now they're 30 feet. So there is a great deal of benefit to those two changes that we think improve the site plan. We'll get to another animated site plan in a minute to show you a different layout too, but this is going to be a before and after. These particular live work units on St. Pete Drive, the before and after image is exactly the same because nothing changed. So I'll skip through those, but just to assure you, the same thing here, before and after on the units in St. Pete Drive didn't change. If you look behind this building, the live work, you may or may not be able to tell that the units shifted. Those are the standard interior units on the back. Again, the architecture stayed the same, right? The units just moved around to allow for that extra park green size and to park the cars under. More of the same. Again, we're not changing anything on St. Pete Drive. Before and after, again, starting to be repetitive here, but they are the same.
Hold on just a second, our screen's blanked out.
Oh,
Our screen's blanked out.
Can you all see okay?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're back.
Don't move your leg.
okay.
Was it me? I just moved
Latency
my leg.
here, huh?
Yeah, so the 3 sides of the not same, they're all the same because it's the same image. We just want to point out to make sure you understand that we didn't change anything, so we're showing you repetitive. So when we get to the corner of the building, these two before and after really just show that we have indicating on the right, on the after, the architecture is the same, but we're showing what we would hope would be a cafe, a corner unit, live work unit. And if there was, we wanted to point out that the plaza there at the corner of the apex behind the O, with some outdoor lighting in the evening, just to show some thematic elements of what could be there. Again, we can't force anyone to put a cafe, but the idea is that it would be a lovely place for one. So that's the difference between these units, but the units on the right, all down St. Pete Drive, are exactly the same. This is just a closer up of what we just described, showing some activity around the corner. More of the same. Indicate that unit. You can almost see there's a sign there that says coffee. That unit on the far right is the one that we would hope would be the cafe because it abuts the public space. These are just some additional images, hopefully showing you better views of that cafe space. You can see it's pretty open. That kiosk in the middle, that's always been there. That's an identifiable entryway. That's also the mailbox kiosk for the community to try to bring people up to the front. You know, we want our downtown to have pedestrians. We didn't change the O, the artwork. That's still the same one. And then now we'll get into some where they're actually will be more descriptive of the unit's interior of the site. This particular image is the back side of the live work units where the cars are parked in the driveway because we can't make those garages smaller because in front of the garages here are the live work units because they're elevated, they're not in the floodplain. So these before and after are exactly the same. To give you an idea, this is the only units that have the cars parked in the driveway. The rest are tucked under. This is an additional image to show you that the townhomes at the Park Green, we have a much wider Park Green, big front porches. This image wasn't in the original packet, so we're just showing some additional images here for you. These are what we call the interior units, and they're interior of the project. That whole first floor there's a small entryway with the stairs, and then the rest is garage or parking because we're below flood. So the living areas on these townhouses are on the second and third floor. Here we go, an image of before and after of what I just described. Before there, on the left, you'll see a very large garage, much deeper than 2 cars. And on the right, you'll see what we did is we just pushed that garage door forward to allow us to park 2 cars behind the garage and under the building. You'll see some imagery shortly that'll show you the difference when you can park a car under. I'm sorry, this is the in unit, right? We have 2 units, the in unit and the interior unit, very similar in nature. We push the garage forward. Front door is still in the generally same location. As I mentioned before, the overall dimensions, here's a great place to see that the length and width of the building didn't change from the original approved site plan. Now we'll show you a town in the rear elevation view where now the cars are parked underneath. So we've pushed this building towards the street. You'll see a small apron there. It's designed that you can't park a car there because it won't fit. So it can't hang into the street. So it's purposely designed to be that distance. Here's another view of a 4-plex instead of a 6-plex, same idea. So the idea is that people generally use their garage for storage in this state. We were trying to hide the cars, as well as it gives the advantage of giving us more green space, like I told you before. So it's a two-prong benefit. Now we'll show you some imagery where it'll be hard to see exactly where the buildings move because some buildings moved about 5 feet away to give you bigger Park Green. Some moved 10. But overall, you can see on the left and the right, before the front buildings out at St. Pete Drive didn't change. And if you look beyond that, you can hardly tell unless you had to scale out that the buildings moved. But we wanted to show the imagery that they did slightly change. Here is another one. This one is a big difference. If you look on the left, we used to have the units along the behind back. There's a long row where the parking's in front of the units. Do you see the street? That was, and then there's a triangle beyond that's a smaller Park Green. On the right, you'll see the streets now moved behind the buildings, which allowed that Park Green to expand where the street used to be. Because essentially on the one on the left, there's 30 feet between the back of that building and the property line, but it's a giant unwieldy ditch. Once we piped the ditch, we simply put the driveway over the ditch and allowed us all this extra space without changing the dimensions of the site. This will give you a better idea. If you look on the right, you can see the green space, the triangle in the middle. It's noticeably larger than one on the left. That's what we just described. Maybe that'll give you some better comparison when you look at the two. And then this one I can toggle. So if you look here, I knew this was going to do that. All right. So this is before. See the small triangle in the middle? It's still nice. It's a park green. But you see the parking in front of the buildings, right? And as soon as I click the clicker once, you can start to see what happens. So the triangle gets bigger, the units slide, allows us to drive on the back side of the property. It allows all the units to get farther away from the property. So does that kind of help you see? The library, the theater parcel didn't change. None of the dimensions of the little cutout there on the right-hand side next to the library changed. The streets would move, but the general appearance of the street is the same. Right, loop road, there's still a loop road on the after. There was a loop road on the original approved site plan. You can see the pool on the original is kind of next to the property in the back on the top of the page, and now the pool is integral to the park green. So pull it away from the neighbors. That's generally what changed. A citizen mentioned before that when we brought this back to go through the process again, it was because there was technical changes to the site plan, but from a designer standpoint, it has the intent of the original site. Same, we're not asking for any variances. In fact, we removed one of the requested variances because we don't need it anymore. I can't remember what the variance was now. Okay, thank you. All right, great. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
So hello again, Tatiana Childress, City of Oldsmar Planning and Redevelopment Director. So why are we here with the same site plan again? I don't know if you recall that last year on June 8th, 2022, Planning Board met and recommended approval of the original DA 2201, which is the development agreement with similar terms, with the same terms. And on July 19th, 2022, City Council adopted the development agreement on the second public hearing. But in preparation for the site plan submittal, the applicant's design team developed a revised site plan, everything that you just saw. So the alley-loaded two-car garages, they included alley-loaded two-car garages, drainage culvert construction with paved road over the existing ditch, secondary exit at State Street, which is a one-way only, revised parking, green space increase, community building, additional green space at the northern section of the site, relocation of the pool to the green space and away from neighbors, additional offset of the building 8 further away from neighbors by 10 feet. And while the overall site plan design layout and geometry, number of units and density remains the same as the originally approved site plan in the development agreement 2201, the above described site revisions were determined to constitute material changes and therefore required to comply with section 14.7 of the Land Development Code, triggering the initial development approval steps. So on December 6, 2022, the amended site plan was presented to council. The city council directed the city manager to host 3 public open houses to present the conceptual plan in essential terms back to the public. There were 25 total participants, and at those public hearings, the public generally favorably received all of these changes and recommended approval of these of the site plan changes. I can go in details with my PowerPoint presentation into the essential terms. They're basically the same. As John just mentioned, there's only one variance, which is now not required due to the design changes. So the site plan is the same. The property size, the acquired property is still 6.22 acre parcel, the same as in the original agreement. The location, this is the original site plan. The zoning, it still meets the zoning and the land use. All remains the same. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The background, then I just described the background.
I can't read that fast.
These are changes. I've just described the changes, so I'm going back into the essential terms are of the amended development agreement are the same as the essential terms of the original development agreement. And the proposed design exceptions or variances are now limited to 3, so driveway flares as shown on the conceptual plan, setbacks to driveways shown on the conceptual plan, and there's promenade steps in the right-of-way to meet existing sidewalk for building 1, 2, and 3. Proposed design is still consistent with the architectural design standards of the Town Center Code. And the city manager recommends the planning board and city council approve and adopt amended development agreement with Devon Rationale LLC for mixed-use development with 82 townhomes, including 18 live-work units in accordance with section 14.7 of the Land Development Code.
I remember the variance, we removed the front drive, we used to have that unit along the back, they had front driveways, right, which we didn't want. That was a variance we deleted because now all the units are alley located.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Does anyone
We're
have
happy
questions of
to
staff?
take any questions.
Go ahead.
Do the amendments or the changes affect drainage at all?
So they covered the culvert, which is now proposed. There is a ditch, existing ditch. So now that ditch is going to be, to have the culvert. Culvert is this kind of like a big RCP pipe, right, with the road over it. So that's the effect of the drainage.
And parking?
The
Visitor
parking,
Visitor parking.
visitor parking, per plan in the original plan.
It's overparked.
This provides more
That's
parking
public parking
in
though, right?
the
That's not,
site data table. So there are total 230 parking spaces, but 164 of those per, 2 spaces per unit for the townhomes. So there's additional parking.
and that's not counting what's underneath of the building.
It does, it covers,
does
because
count,
those 2
yeah.
spaces are covered to, are, yes, included. Let me see if I can find a better plan that shows parking.
36 guest spaces, 10 pool spaces, 25 on-street spaces. See anything about speed bumps? Where's the car wash?
Any other questions for staff?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, I do. I see the steps in the front. Is that above grade, that whole level there?
Yes, so those units are commercial, and you have to meet the ADA compliance. Also, they have to be designed above the flood elevation. Since we have the maps changed, they had to bring it to the elevation that's above the base flood.
Which would be,
12, I believe.
what, then the buildings behind are what height? They're not, they're,
So they're
What,
on
lower, right?
they're on grade. Yeah, so only the promenade is going to be elevated with the steps. Everything else is on grade, so they're minimizing the fill because all of the garages that are on grade. There's not going to be that much fill from what I understand. I haven't seen the final engineering drawings yet, but from this conceptual design, because you see, as demonstrated on this, I can point out, but you see that the first level of each unit in the back is going to have either a garage or parking spaces on the first floor, so it's not going to be elevated. The second and third level is where the living space will be. So to minimize that fill, it's pretty much on grade with limited fill from what I understand.
so the stormwater is going to go to the ditch?
The storm design will be designed by a professional engineer. So the way it works, they capture the design, the water, the runoff from
Right.
the storm, and then it will be conveyed to the ditch. Yes.
Which ditch? The
With the
DOT
retention.
ditch? The State Street ditch? That ditch is a DOT ditch that you're culverting in. Which ditch are you going to stormwater to?
It'll be conveyed to the existing city stormwater capacity. I don't know exactly where it's going, but that's where it has to go.
Because
So it can't go out into the wilderness.
right, so it has to
there's
be
a
captured.
retention.
It has to be captured on site. It will be designed during the final engineering drawings, but because we're in the community redevelopment area, we do have stormwater buy-in. So the city has capacity to take that storm into their system, basically.
Well, there's no retention pond in these drawings, so,
Because we're in the CRA, community redevelopment, as one of the incentives that we offer in the town center is to, instead of providing on-site retention, we allow for the developer to buy into the storm system, the city storm system.
when you say capture, how, you're not
So-
capturing in a retention pond, you're capturing it towards a ditch, right?
Well, I'm not sure how it will be conveyed, so if ditch is gonna just be culverted, and I'm not sure where the outfall will be. Once we have the final design drawings, we'll see where the water is going.
So unless you're gonna poke little holes in that culvert, you're not gonna use that culvert for runoff, which then goes down to the Lafayette drainage basin into the retention ponds. Okay,
I
just as
am
long as the
not an
neighborhood doesn't
engineer,
flood.
so
Yeah.
I'm not sure where, again, the outfall will be, but I can assure you that the water will not be running off into the neighboring streets, because as part of the commercial design, commercial site, you have to create inlets, the ones that you see on the road, and that's where the water will drain to the inlets. Via inlets, it will be collected with the storm system, and it will be taken out from that site.
Do we know how much of that ditch is gonna be culverted all the way to Arlington or all the way to Lafayette? Well, it's partially.
It will only be covered on the property, so it'll stop at School Street.
So there'll still be an open ditch at School Street from Arlington to the end of School Street?
Yes, sir.
All right. Buffer, you're gonna have a road, a new road, the one-way road to Awesome Automotive exit, which is the business across the street from State Street, that, well, I'm sure we'll have a stop sign, it's one way. Is there a fence buffer or a vegetation buffer along that long red line from Bob Wright's vacant lot, that line down there at the vacant lot, 1, 2, 3, 4 houses on Arlington that you see there, abutting that diagonal line is the ditch. Is there any type of buffer besides distance between the development and that area, which, well, really just the DOT retention pond and 2 houses?
I believe some of those trees will be preserved in that area.
Whoa, good, because you're killing a lot of trees. Is there going to be any type of fencing?
All the trees to the right of that diagonal line aren't being cut.
The area between School Street, the area of School Street, there's one house, School Street, and the vacant Bob Wright property, I don't know what else to call it, the city lot. Is there any type of buffer going to be there as in a fence, like there is behind the library? Okay, and if you're not at grade, if you're at grade, because the library wasn't at grade, they raised that library land very high, so that's why the fence is 9 feet there. If that's a grade, then it can be a regular 6-foot fence, I assume.
Yes.
That's all the questions I had, thanks.
One more,
Thank you. Other questions?
one more. Just one quick question about going back to drainage. When you guys design the new drainage, are we gonna see it?
Oh, yeah, I forgot one, thanks, I forgot to ask that.
So this will be presented at the council, I believe, so
We'll never
during
see
the
it
site
again.
plan.
At least you'll look out for us then.
You will be able to see it during the final site plan, you will see it at the plating. So the plat will have to come to the planning board, and that will be, at that time, we'll already have drainage reviewed by staff. But it will be basically, any project final design will go to the council for approval.
That's after the fact of drainage mistakes well, I know there won't be any mistakes.
You can't convey any of the retention on the site. You can't convey it off-site. It can't go anywhere but in the inlets, be pushed downstream. So it can't go to the property next to it in any which way. So no, by design. So that will happen at the engineering stage.
And SwiftMud looks at it as well, so it's not just city staff, so they will be required to obtain the SwiftMud permit as well.
Yeah, I know that's the goal for stormwater, and I know we'll meet it, so. But it's important, because the sheet flow in that area historically has been to the southeast, which is kind of unusual because the base of the southwest. But sheet flow has always been that way in that general area, because I lived there a long time. And I've watched the flooding. When we got bad rain, it would kind of go that way. And when the homes got built, there was more flooding over by the DOT ditch, because when the library was put in, the sheet flow went down there, and there was a whole lot of adjustments to get that water off that property into the DOT ditch, because the people at the house next to School Street were flooding their yards in the heavy rainstorms. So it was an issue, and it's a concern,
I see.
naturally, because it's my neighborhood, John's neighborhood. He'll get most of the water. Thank you, Tatiana.
Other questions?
Welcome.
Yeah, I have one. Right now, there's a lot of green space there. And when you get a 10-inch rain, it goes into the ground and some of it runs off, and we've got the ditch to take care of a lot of it. When you cover all this in concrete and asphalt, you're going to really increase the amount of runoff, really increase it. Have you taken that into consideration when you close in the ditch and build in a culvert and to the other round?
So all of that runoff will have to be captured on site and then into those inlets again, downspouts from your roofs
Yeah.
into the inlets. So none of that could run to neighbors again by design, by the criteria that we have. So it all has to be captured, all that water.
There's also, there's also a calculation, you're not allowed to cover the existing site with X amount of impervious.
Yeah,
And we're well below the city's requirement for that as well. So, yes, you're right, when you cover all that space, it does have to go somewhere, but all of that will be calculated in the drainage.
so it's already been accounted for.
It's being, it's being engineered now, so I don't have the exact calcs, but you'll see that site plan to show you the calculations of how it's being captured and where it's going, by the way, too.
Because this is, this type of thing has always been one of my pet peeves, is we're concreting everything in Florida. And I've always been opposed to it. I understand we have to, do things and like this. And quite frankly, this is the best thing I've seen for this property. But it's just, you concrete everything.
Let's put pavers in.
Huh?
Let's put pavers in.
Like, you can't put
There will
pavers.
be a lot of pavers here as well, because they're impervious, so you'll see all the
Yeah.
things are pavers.
Oh, that's cool. That's good news.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of green. This is the older plan. The newer plan has more green. I believe 40% of the site is going to be
I don't remember the number, but it's
close to 40%.
well below what could be there. The unit count's also lower than what could be there too, so.
Well, we'll see the plat. We can complain then.
Oh, yeah, I'm aware of the impervious versus pervious surfaces, and like I said, it's just my personal thing. Yeah, there is a lot of them there, and you're gonna leave a lot, but you're gonna take a whole lot.
There's 8 live oaks in there. I counted them the other day.
8? Oh, my God.
But most of them are laurel and water, pine, few homeless.
Thank you.
And the new landscape plan will be required as part of the new updated
Oh,
site
yeah,
plan as
sure, I
well.
know,
So
yeah.
we'll plant new trees in there, or the developer will plant new trees in the area as well.
If there are other questions? So, just one moment. I did want to say that I appreciated the before and after pictures. I think that was very helpful to remind everybody that we've already, seen,
Approved it
and this
once,
has been a
yes.
long process. I did appreciate how we kept going back to the idea of the drainage. And I know it's on a small scale, but, not to make it about me, but having been on the receiving end of someone that didn't do a project correctly, which I'm sure won't happen in this case because we have professionals doing it, and being told by the city that it was my problem. I just wouldn't want that to happen to the people that are living in the neighbors. So I know that a lot of careful thought's going into that. So I guess I had the same question, just to make sure that a lot of careful thought is put into, so that, when the drainage is planned, that we're not telling people that now they have to do work on their own properties because of somebody building something in their backyard.
Yeah, and we've got more green space and less concrete, so that makes me a little happier.
So I know that wasn't a question, but I did appreciate, the before and after and the presentation. And is there anyone here that would like to speak on this topic? I saw your hand up before, sir.
David Llewellyn, 212 Bengal. The culvert is an important part of the revision, and the roadway is a real improvement. But as you said, you're going to have a tremendous amount of drainage now going through not only the culvert, but also through the rest of the DOT drainage ditch. Who's going to be responsible for maintaining this culvert and the increased use on the drainage ditch? That's it.
Oh, so I believe that's a question for staff?
So this will be on the developer, so because it's on a private property, so it will be the developer's responsibility to maintain any portion of the storm system.
You mean after the development is finished, the developer will still be responsible for it?
For the DOT ditch?
The HOA will take over, so once the development is complete, then the HOA will be in place.
Oh, okay,
And
I misunderstood you then. Because the developer's not going to maintain it after they're through, no. Okay, I misunderstood you.
But from School Street on to where it dumps, well, it gets culverted at a property on Lafayette, but it opens up again at Lafayette. The DOT still maintains that because we've had the chain gang down there cleaning that out before. So the DOT has had trustees down there cleaning it out in the past, but they haven't done it in years. Hey, they're good
Is
kids.
there anyone else that would like to speak in favor or opposed to this item? Seeing no one. Have any written comments been submitted on this issue? So then I will close the public hearing, and we're looking for a motion on this item.
Recommend to
Can I
City
ask
Council.
another question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't mind.
Certainly.
I'm just curious, because the covered parking creates kind of a dark area, if there will be lighting, additional lighting included with the design to? That's correct. Okay. Thank you.
Any others? Okay, so then we're looking for a motion on the agenda item.
Recommend the City Council the approval of DA 2301 Devin S. Russell LLC Development Agreement.
My second.
We'll put that to a roll call vote.
Any discussion?
Oh, any discussion? Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm here to
I
help.
knew I needed you.
I don't have anything to decide. Asked all the questions I am gonna ask.
Anyone discussion? Right, yeah, we're ready.
Okay, roll call vote. Board Member Cambanis,
Aye.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Rambourg,
Aye.
Board Member Mason,
Aye.
Board Member Sock,
Aye.
Board Member Pelletier, Chair Oliver.
Aye.
The motion to recommend to City Council approval of DA 2301 is approved with 7 votes for and 0 against.
Go density. Hey, go density.
And happy International Women's Day, right, today?
I'm gonna join Tom Price and move out of town.
Move to
Anyway.
dismiss?
You should have watched that meeting.
Move to adjourn?
Dan's tracking.
To adjourn, yes.
Leave, Tom.
Move to adjourn, sorry.
Move to adjourn.
I have a,
Second.
There you go.
thank you. This meeting of the planning